Welcome everybody to the Scale Up Show. This is your host Ryan Saley, and I have a very special guest back with me today. I have Dan Gottlieb, who is a vice president analyst at Gartner, specifically for the sales practice and their resident expert in terms of Gen AI as relates to sales. Dan, welcome. Happy to have you back on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Pumped to be here.
So excited to be here. So here's the thing, man. Let's just get right into it. Last episode, if you missed it, we talk about the current state of mayhem in the sales tech space, as well as the future, where it's going. Now we're going to go and hit a little bit more tactical, specifically as it relates to Gen AI. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Dan, and I was curious about this, is what's your thoughts on leveraging overall general purpose technology like large language models? And for those of you listening, you probably know what these are, but I will illustrate them to be on the safe side. So we got Copilot, we got Gemini, we got ChatGPT, we got Claude, just to give a few examples, versus more hyper-specific use case. So that could be for conversational intelligence, that could be for lead capture, that could be for sequences, and there's a lot of overlap of everything in between. So what's your thoughts about the general purpose versus the specific?
Well, if I'm in sales, there's only so much I can control, and so when I think about my ability to take advantage of all of the technology that's available to me, there's two things. One is how well do I already know how to use the use case specific AI for sales technologies to help me do my job? How much effort do I really need to put into getting value from them? And I think that's where software like conversation intelligence is really valuable. If you have virtual calls, people are comfortable recording calls, it immediately, all I need to do is just show up to the call and do my thing, and I get value from the software, right? Mm-hmm. If I know how to go in and use it for reflective purposes and follow up, etc. Whereas in the general purpose tools require me to put more effort into getting value from them. But if you are, and this is where I think that an individual's comfort level is ultimately going to be what dictates how much value they can get from this tech. And so I think that there's actually more limited upside in the general purpose technologies because of how much effort a sales rep has to put into learning how to use the technology today. And in the very near term, some of the same capabilities that they could have done out of a general purpose large language model, they'll be able to conduct those same activities, but with a more sales specific lens within the technologies that are provided to them. Mm-hmm. So what do I think about it in summary? I think look, you should learn the basics of large language models because all it's going to do is make it way easier for you to get a lot of value out of the similar technology that your company provides whenever it gets there, which will probably be in the next year or two. Mm-hmm. Because the data, and I'll kind of give you what I talk to clients about, the differentiators between any kind of AI for sales, generative AI for sales more specifically, capabilities and vendors in the market. There's kind of four things. One is distribution. Are you already in my tech stack? Do I need to learn something new? Now, luckily, with some of the large language models, folks have already gravitated towards them. It doesn't feel like something new because learning how to use them, is as simple as just asking a question, in theory. But still, distribution is number one. The second one is workflow and how much friction there is in the workflow to get value from the software. So this is where that effort piece comes in. And this is, I think, a negative. It's a knock on the general large language models because of how much effort I have to put in to return something that's often useful. So that's what limits that upside for the average sales rep versus a conversation intelligence tool where all I need to do is just show up to the call and I get some useful data that comes out of that call. The third is RAG strategy. So we talked about RAG in the last episode, but really the product's RAG strategy, how can I ground the large language model in my company's product, value proposition, the customer data that I have available to me, the deal data that I have available to me, these a lot of these, this is where things get really, really complex, where you're really not going to be able to do this without using the company provided tools, unless you put in Herculean effort on using the open large language models, and you're probably breaking some IT rules. And then the last one is, what value do these products provide to our broader data strategy? Like, can you help me capture data in a compelling way? Can you help me? Do you bring any unique data to me that can be useful? Do you integrate with company sources of data that can be helpful? And that really favors the use case specific sales technologies, because that is their core value proposition, right? Like, so when you think about an email writing assistant like a Reggie or a Lavender, one of the value propositions of them is that they bring a bunch of unique data sources into the process behind the scenes that you don't see. That makes using those products, and the models are a little more opinionated towards sales email writing. And so, as opposed to using a general large language model that isn't opinionated about what a good sales email looks like. So I think all those points add up to, we got to learn the basics of the large language models that are available, because that's just going to give you upside when you can start using them similarly for internal reasons. But in sales technology that is more use case specific is going to be more valuable to sales reps because of the reasons that I've mentioned.
Makes sense, man. Yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it. I like that lens. What would you say are other variations for sales leadership based on what you just described?
Oh, man.
We're talking all about the reps. Now let's talk about more from a leadership perspective.
I mean, from a leadership perspective, like, it's all about the use case specific sales tech, because at the manager level, we're talking about two things. What's going on in my deals? Where can I help? And how do I communicate what's going on in my deals up and out? I think that's one sort of general lens around your core responsibility of delivering the number on your team. And I think that favors, you can only do that with having a lot of internal deal data. I think where large language models are really helpful is making it easier to understand some of the existing predictive scoring that's happening inside of the deals, explaining what's happened, explaining histories of deals, explaining the statuses of deals. You can answer more questions faster using a large language model. So I definitely expect in our AI, generative AI for sales research, we have AI sales leadership assistance as a use case specifically around managing the pipeline and forecast. But there's a whole other side of this that I'm really excited about, which is the talent development side, which is not different from deal coaching. I'm talking about, like, how do I help Ryan be a better sales rep? And that's a different angle that not every sales leadership team actually takes or cares about. We talk about coaching, but let's be real, right? And so I think what the hard part about coaching is, like, creating time and space to think about how to, and structure around how to coach. And this is, I think, where I see some really cool software that's focusing on this problem, that's trying to give managers in natural language suggestions for ways to help individual reps get better at their jobs based on all of the similar data, but it's presented to them differently. And that gets me excited. So I think those are kind of two ways I see and think about the role of software in the sales leadership role.
Okay. Yeah. I think those make a lot of sense. It's funny. I just did a use case for that one specifically. So I'll share that video. I did an explainer video on it. I haven't released it yet. But basically it's about creating, and I don't know, it was like 6 minutes, a 6-week personal development training plan for your team for your sales meetings with questions, guides, everything all included. It's pretty slick, man. So
I love it. I would
yeah,
even add one more thing to that list, which is the opportunity that sales leadership teams have to do a better job of using the sales pipeline as a source of competitive intelligence and as a source of product input, by using some of the available data. If you're using Call AI, for example, to synthesize trends from your team into memos or decks that structure what you're hearing from the market in your pipeline, to be able to provide that to the organization and being a more value-added go-to-market partner as opposed to just a quota-carrying sales leader, which we do anyways organically, but we've never thought about how we could scale our role in go-to-market leadership. It's just something the best do naturally. And I think that's a really compelling use case for a large language model in sales
yeah.
leadership.
No, it's great, man. You could use it for marketing as well. So you could have like most common phrases, common objections. Like it's really pretty solid at what you're talking about. So love that, man. So that was awesome. We're just about up on time, so I guess I'll ask you one final question. Like as a whole, what do you think? And this is maybe too big of a question for the final one, but we want to leave on a good note, right? Is like, what do you think is the biggest need for sales teams and sales leaders across the market right now that's like unmet?
Man, just make my life easier. I mean, we think so much about like all these crazy use cases, and I think just focusing on making it easier for me to track down answers to questions about our product, about our company, about an account, about a deal, make that information easier to find with like one click is, I feel like, just such a obvious opportunity for making the lives of your organization better. The value prop of this technology right now is like time savings, a little bit of conversion benefit, but mainly time savings, right? And so I find that those time savings aren't being thought about as intentionally as they could be for the frontline teams that are just mired in crap. I mean, we have a lot of data at Gartner, and one of our diagnostics is called the seller time spend assessment. And I mean, if I were to tell you the amount of time that is spent on non-selling activities, it is probably one of the top. Everyone knows this. We've talked about it forever, but we just accept it as status quo. As just like, yeah, it's just a job. You deal with a lot of crap, right? And I refuse to accept that is the job. We could design a better way to handle administration, and that's what I would be steering my AI agents at primarily.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking like RFP stuff. I'm thinking deal desk. I'm thinking like knowledge management, tracking down nuanced answers to questions and scaling the value of the sales engineering resourcing. Like those are, I think, the things that are right in front of us right now that I think a lot of folks are jumping over because they want to think about AI for conversion.
Yeah. Well, that's what's attached to ROI. So that's always where everybody's head goes because they have to show an ROI for investment most of the time. At least that's what is catching a lot of people. But I know we're up on time, man. I don't want to keep you any longer. We've gone over. Where can people find you? Where can they find more about Gartner? And we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. The only Dan Gottlieb at Gartner. And then we have an awesome website at Gartner for Sales where you can learn about how we provide research for sales teams specifically. And there's a lot of free content on that page.
Love that, man. Well, it was a pleasure having you on for part 2. If you missed part 1, go back and check. Dan does not under-deliver there. Dan, it's a pleasure having you on, and look forward to seeing you again soon, man.
Thanks, Ryan. Much appreciated.
All right, and we will see you all on the next episode.